Got another party question for you. So questions that I get asked at parties. Someone asked me the other day, he said to me, I hear you guys treat dizziness. How the hell do you treat dizziness at a patient since you only do physical stuff to them? There is a condition that creates dizziness in people called BBPV. And the reason that it's got the initials of the words is because it's called benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, which hence why we call it BBPV. Imagine trying to say that 4 words over and over again to a patient. This is a condition of the vestibular system. The vestibular system is an ancient part of your brain. It's been around for a lot longer than the thinking part of your brain. And its job virtually is to make sure that you stand upright, be able to balance, and know where your body is in space. It's located, or the peripheral part of it, the part now outside the actual mechanism part of it, is located near the inner part of the ear where the cochlea is. And it's interesting because the fluid used in the cochlea to help with hearing is a similar fluid that is used in the vestibular system. It's the movement of this fluid within the system that gives our brain all the signals to tell us where we are and what's going on. So there are little tubes called the semicircular canals. You don't need to know that. But the fluid movement in that moves little hairs in the semicircular canals, and that tells us, or tells you, when you're looking left, looking right, looking up, looking down, whether you're accelerating forwards or decelerating, whether you're travelling at a constant speed. Other parts of the vestibular system, including this fluid, allows you to understand where you are in space in relative to gravity. So if you've got your head on the side, it's letting you know your head's on the side, or if you're upside down, it lets you know you're upside down. And the way it does that is that there are these little hairs that we talked about, have these tiny little crystals sitting on top of them, which means that these little crystals are gravity dependent, whereas in the semicircular canals, they're not gravity dependent. So this system tells us how we are upright compared to gravity. The problem occurs is when these little crystals occasionally dislodge and then they go somewhere where they shouldn't, which is into the semicircular canals. So the part of benign paroxysmal positional vertigo that we're interested in is the positional part. When we move our head, we get this sense of dizziness. A lot of people will describe the room spinning, and it will occur for anywhere between 5 to 30 seconds before it dampens down. And when they move their head again to another position, they'll get that sense of dizziness again. It can be quite debilitating, and people get very worried about it. They get very scared, and they think it's something serious, and they've got brain tumours and a whole range of bits and pieces. But it's actually a benign, which is the benign part of the wording of it, which means it's not going to kill you. It's basically something that's sitting there that can be treated. When the crystals move into the semicircular canals, or we change our head position, the crystals move in the canal. That moves the fluid, and the fluid moves the hair, and that tells the brain that we're moving. So often you'll see with these people who have this dizziness that their eyes will have this little flickering movement, or a rotational component to it. And I often say to my patients, the eyes are the window into the vestibular system. And so when we do a lot of our testing, we're staring into people's eyes as we do the testing process, because the eye movement is very important. It tells us a lot of information. But to cut a long story short, basically these little crystals have ended up in the vestibular system in the wrong place. And there are a series of exercises specific for each part or each condition of BPP, because there's quite a few different types of BPP, and each one has a different exercise, and that exercise helps move the debris out of the semicircular canals back to where they belong. The beauty of treating this condition is that people come in extremely concerned about the dizziness. They're very worried about it. Once they learn that it's a simple condition of BBPV, and they learn that there's simple exercises to do to make them feel better, they get less worried and less anxious. And then the wonderful thing is we start the exercises, and they're fairly simple, but doing the right exercise for the right person is very important. After a session of that, they feel better. We send them home. They do a whole range of exercises at home, They feel so much better. So when they come back for their second sessions for us to review, now most people are either sorted, finished, or completely good dizziness has gone away, or are significantly better by that stage. And so there's that anxiousness, that all that worry is dropped off their shoulders, and they're very happy, which is why it's such a pleasure to treat, because you make so many people happy. Because it really does debilitate their lifestyle when you can't walk straight down a corridor, or you can't turn left in a car because it makes you dizzy and want to run off the road. We tend to always do a third session or follow-up session either a week to 10 days afterwards and do all the assessments again. It's quite an important part of the process because we want to make sure that we have nailed that condition. The reason that we talk about nailing that condition is that there are some conditions out there that are much more sinister that cause dizziness, and part of a good physiotherapist repertoire in the assessment process for BBPV is testing for those things that might be more sinister. Now, I would have tested in the first session for those more sinister things, but sometimes they are clouded by the signs and symptoms of BBPV. So once we've cleared them, I like to then go back and retest for the more sinister type stuff.